He never fought a battle, never died a martyr, and performed no famous miracles. Yet he reshaped Christianity more than most saints you've ever heard of. Stephen Harding was not a conquering king, a miracle-working hermit, or a martyr in the arena. He was something rarer and, in the long run, more powerful. A builder of spiritual order. When medieval monastic life drifted toward comfort, Stephen helped drag it back toward discipline. When religious houses grew rich, he pushed monks again toward poverty, labor, and simplicity. When institutions usually fractured as they spread, he helped create a system that held together. That is why this quiet English monk became one of the true architects of Western monasticism. He is remembered today as one of the founders of the Cistercian Order. In calendars connected with April 17th, he is the saint commemorated for this day. Yet, his story begins far from Burgundy, in the south of England. Stephen was born around the middle of the 11th century, probably about 1060. Sources connect his origins with Sherborne in Dorset, an old monastic center in England. He received his early education at the Benedictine Abbey of Sherborne. That matters because his mind was formed inside the discipline of prayer, study, and liturgy. He was not just pious, but also intellectually serious from an early age. Later sources also associate him with further study in places like Paris and Rome. Those details fit the picture of a man shaped by learning as much as by austerity. He lived during an age when Western Christendom was reforming itself from within. Churchmen were fighting corruption, laxity, and the confusion of spiritual and worldly power. Monasteries were not outside that struggle. Many had grown wealthy and less demanding. Some monks wanted not novelty, but a more exact return to the rule of Saint Benedict. Stephen became one of those men. At some point after his youth, he left England and crossed into the wider world. A later tradition says he even passed through Scotland after the Norman conquest. What is certain is that he eventually arrived in Burgundy in France. There he came into contact with the monastery of Molesme. At Molesme, Stephen encountered Abbot Robert, later known as Saint Robert of Molesme. Robert was a reforming abbot serious about restoring stricter monastic observance. Stephen was deeply impressed by his holiness and joined the community. This was the turning point that redirected the whole course of his life. At Molesme, Stephen also formed ties with the men who would shape the Cistercian future. Among them was Alberic, who would become another key founder of the new reform. The problem was not that monasticism itself had failed. The problem was that many communities were no longer living it with full seriousness. The rule of Saint Benedict called for prayer, obedience, manual work, and stability of life. In practice, many houses had become entangled in wealth, privilege, and outside obligations. Stephen and others wanted a harder life, but a cleaner one. They wanted less ornament, less dependence on feudal revenues, and less compromise. They wanted the monastery to be truly monastic again. In 1098, Robert left Molesme with a group of monks to found a new community. Stephen Harding was among that band. The new foundation was Cîteaux, known in Latin as Cistercium, in Burgundy near Dijon. This was not yet a grand order with a famous name. It was a poor and fragile beginning, exposed to uncertainty from the start. The founders intended to live the rule of Saint Benedict with deliberate literal seriousness. They embraced poverty, serious work, liturgical discipline, and a more stripped-down community life. The early years were hard, and the new monastery was far from secure. Robert was soon required to return to Molesme to restore peace there. That left the new foundation in danger of dying before it had truly begun. Alberic succeeded Robert and strengthened the young community. When Alberic died, Stephen Harding became the third abbot of Cîteaux in 1111. Now the story becomes larger, because Stephen was not only austere but gifted in governance. Many holy men can inspire a reform, but far fewer can make it survive. Stephen was the man who gave the Cistercian movement lasting structure and cohesion. Under his leadership, Cîteaux stopped being a fragile experiment and became a growing force. He insisted that monks should support themselves through their own labor. He pressed simplicity even into the physical shape of monastic buildings and churches. This was not simplicity as fashion, but simplicity as theology made visible. A church could be beautiful without being overloaded by display. A monastery could honor God without imitating princely luxury. That spirit became one of the marks of Cistercian life and architecture. Stephen also cared intensely about textual and liturgical accuracy. He worked to secure uniform observance across the expanding communities. He revised biblical and liturgical texts so the monks would pray from reliable copies. A famous achievement associated with him is the so-called Stephen Harding Bible. Britannica and other historical sources note that he prepared an edition of the Bible around 1112. What makes that especially striking is that he reportedly consulted Jewish authorities in this work. That was unusual and serious scholarship for the period. He was not content with careless copying or inherited errors. He wanted the text used in prayer to be as accurate as possible. This tells you something vital about the man. Stephen Harding was no anti-intellectual fanatic. He united austerity with learning and discipline with precision. That combination helped give the early Cistercians both moral and institutional strength. His leadership also coincided with explosive growth. The first great daughter houses came in rapid succession. La Ferté was founded in 1113. Pontigny followed in 1140. Then came Clairvaux and Morimond in 1115. Those foundations became the roots of an immense monastic network across Europe. One name especially stands out in that expansion: Bernard of Clairvaux. In 1112, Bernard entered Cîteaux with about 30 companions, including relatives and friends. His arrival gave the young reform enormous momentum. Stephen received him, formed him, and in 1115 sent him out to found Clairvaux. Bernard would become the most famous Cistercian of the age. But that later brilliance depended in no small part on Stephen's earlier discipline and judgment. The genius of Stephen Harding appeared most clearly in the Carta Caritatis, the Charter of Charity. This document is one of the foundational texts of the Cistercian Order. It was approved by Pope Calixtus II in 1119. Its importance is difficult to exaggerate. Medieval monasteries often struggled to preserve unity once they multiplied across different regions. Stephen's solution was neither chaos nor suffocating central control. Instead, the Carta established a family structure among abbeys. Mother houses and daughter houses were linked by bonds of responsibility and care. Abbots were to visit their daughter houses regularly. All abbots were also to gather in a general chapter at Cîteaux each year. That meant the order could remain united in observance without crushing local communities. The system balanced authority, fraternity, correction, and independence. It also became historically influential far beyond the Cistercians themselves. Later ecclesiastical legislation took the Cistercian model seriously. In other words, Stephen Harding helped shape not only one order, but how orders could function. He is therefore remembered not merely as a pious abbot, but as a constitutional founder. Some texts also attribute to him the Exordium Cistercii, or related early Cistercian narratives. Modern scholarship is more cautious on that point and does not treat every attribution as certain. That caution is worth keeping because not everything later tradition ascribed to him is equally secure. Still, several sermons and letters connected with him do survive. Even in fragments, they show a man deeply invested in discipline, unity, and authentic monastic life. His relationships were therefore central to his legacy. With Robert of Molesme, he shared the reforming impulse that launched Cîteaux. With Alberic, he helped carry the new foundation through its vulnerable early years. With Bernard, he became the elder guide who prepared a giant of the 12th century. He also seems to have helped extend Cistercian customs to women religious. Vatican sources note that in 1115 he sent statutes to nuns at Juilly-les-Nonants near Dijon. That gesture is linked with the early female branch of Cistercian life. So even his quieter acts had long consequences. Yet when people ask what Stephen Harding is known for most, the answer is clear. He is known for turning a reforming monastery into an enduring order. This is also where expectations about miracles should be handled honestly. Stephen is not remembered chiefly for dramatic wonder stories in the way some medieval saints are. His sanctity rests more on reform, governance, learning, perseverance, and institutional holiness. That does not make his life less impressive. In some ways, it makes it more so. He changed Christian history not by spectacle, but by discipline sustained over decades. As he aged, the strain of that work became visible. By 1133, he was old, infirm, and nearly blind. He resigned the abbacy that year and designated Robert de Monti as his successor. The choice proved unfortunate, but Stephen had reached the limits of his strength. He died at Cîteaux on the 28th March, 1134. He was buried there, associated in some sources with the burial place of Alberic. At the time of his death, the order had grown dramatically. Vatican sources say the Cistercians already counted 75 monasteries by then. That number tells the story of his success better than any compliment could. A movement that looked fragile in 1098 had become an international force by 1134. Centuries later, the Church formally recognized his sanctity. Sources commonly state that he was canonized in 1623 by Pope Urban VIII. Most sources do not point to a distinct, separate beatification stage for him. His liturgical observance has varied according to calendar and community. Older Roman usage associated him with April 17th. Cistercian observance also honored him on July 15th, and later with the founders on January 26th. That is why his feast can appear differently depending on which calendar is being used. His legacy, however, is perfectly clear whichever date appears on the page. Stephen Harding stands for reform without rebellion, poverty without disorder, and tradition without decay. He reminds us that institutions survive not by slogans, but by rule, sacrifice, and fidelity. He helped prove that holiness can build, organize, correct, and endure. Without him, the name of Cîteaux might have remained a footnote. Because of him, it became one of the great engines of medieval Christian renewal. That is why the quiet English monk from Sherborne still deserves to be remembered. Not because he chased fame, but because he gave the Church a harder and cleaner way to live. And that is why St. Stephen Harding remains one of the most important abbots in Christian history.